Holy shit, Burb Real? What's up, Dr. Hero? What's up, Techless? What's up, everyone? Welcome. Hope you're doing well. I'm EP. In my hubris, I got home and I was like, oh, I'm not that EP. Today was okay. I'm gonna stay up and do things. And then I ate dinner and I was like, oh, never mind. I'm not gonna stay up and do things. I'll lay down for like an hour. That'll be fine. And it wasn't. I don't know. I'm fine. I'm ballin'. Just needed a nap. Hopefully it doesn't become a trend like it did last time I was this EP, but we're out here. We're fucking chilling. We're ballin'. Yeah. So that's cool. It was a good nap though. I actually, I dreamed that I did this entire stream, and then I woke up and I was laying on my couch and I was like, oh. Oh no. So, here we are, we're doing it again. Maybe it did happen. Maybe it's all a bit. Maybe I'm doing this stream multiple times. It's like a bit that, it's like a bit I came up with a long time ago. By a long time ago, I mean like, I don't know, it was like New Year's, so about half a year ago. I don't know if I ever actually talked about this on stream, but it's one of my favorite, like I want to make it happen, but I don't know how to make it happen. But the concept is a band called the Dementia Dudes, and the whole thing is they like come out, the thunderous applause, and the concert starts, they play one song, and then they're like, woo! And the crowd goes wild, and they're like, okay, thank you for coming to our concert. We were the Dementia Dudes. And then they go backstage, and then they come back out, like 5 minutes later, and they're like, yo, what's up? Welcome to the concert. We're the Dementia Dudes. And they play the same song, and it just happens like for 2 hours straight because they have dementia. They're the Dementia Dudes. It's like that, but streaming. I've actually done this stream 4 times already. That said, I don't actually... I was probably more coherent in my dream than I'm going to be on this stream. What's up, Goku? Welcome. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, shoutouts to the Dementia Dudes. I'd be surprised if I didn't talk about that at some point, because it's one of the funniest things I've ever came up with, I think. But also I have dementia, so I forgot if I did or not. So there's another layer of irony on top of it. Did you put these nuts in your mouth? I don't know about all that. What's up, Riker? Welcome. Hope you're doing well. I don't think I did, but I mean, we're the Dementia Dudes, so maybe I did and I forgot. Anyway, what was the question again? Okay, anyway, stream topic. Fucking game mechanics. Okay, so, this is one that's been cooking in my brain for a little bit. And it's mostly just a lot of like, kind of connected thoughts that are kind of related, but doesn't really have like a set point. But I've been playing a lot of Stellar Blade in my off time, and by a lot I mean like, I don't know, I get like maybe a 3-hour session in once a week. But it's pretty good. I've been enjoying it. But the one thing I'll say about it, and depending on the type of person you are, might be a positive, might be a... God damn it. Body, please. I'm just trying to talk about Stellar Blade. Okay. So depending on the type of person you are, it might be a positive or a negative thing, but Stellar Blade is a game that is put... They took a bunch of game mechanics from other video games they like, and they made them play pretty well, and they just kind of like slapped them together into a big ball of gameplay mechanics. And you know, there's some positives and negatives to that. For my money, I think it's pretty I think it's pretty respectable that they were like, oh, these are things we like, let's do that. Because not every game really has to be like this original groundbreaking thing where you do something new. So like in that sense, I think it's pretty good. But if you are someone who likes more like experimental, new type of experiences, it may not necessarily be for you. But the thing about that is it kind of, because it was just so like transparently obvious to me, that it was a bunch of gameplay mechanics that were taken from other games I like, which then thinking about it, took those gameplay mechanics from other games that I liked or other games that people liked, because I'm a zoomer and haven't actually played a lot of old games. And I thought there was something there that was kind of neat and kind of worth talking about, because I think it kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say it gets overlooked. I wouldn't say it's necessarily important per se to playing games, but I think subconsciously it's kind of a super important thing for why games are able to do as well as they do. So what do I mean by that? We're the Dementia Dudes. Woo! I lost my train of thought because I was looking at my model move around. It's very entrancing. It's very like, I bring this up every time I do one of these streams, but the way I do this, I actually have VTube Studio open because I don't have a game open right now. Although I might actually pop open Stellar Blade just to show it off and kind of explain some of what I'm talking about. But my model, it moves around in like a very satisfying way. It's very like smooth, very 60 FPS. But no. So video games are relatively new, right? Like they only really started being a thing in like the 70s or 80s. And, you know, I don't know exactly when like the first video game came out or whatever, but Relatively speaking, compared to every other type of media, video games are like new, and it's kind of still the Wild West in that sense. I mean, if you think about like what kind of movies were coming out 50 years after movies were a thing, or like, you know, books kind of still have a wide range of things going on. And music, I mean, music always has a whole lot of things going on. Experimental music's a big deal. But in all of those media, they did definitely form some kind of like coherent, like, this is how you make a movie, this is how you make a book. There's like a lot of shared concepts about storytelling and how to do that visually, how to do that in writing, etc., etc. But with video games, it's, to me, wild that things came together the way they did so quickly, right? And sort of to demonstrate what I'm getting at, red barrels are a fantastic example, and it's more of a subtle one, but like in any video game ever, if you see a red barrel, you know that if you hit that red barrel with a thing, it's going to explode. Another similar one would be, and this is more of a like past 10 years development, I feel like, but like if you see like a yellow rock or like a part of a building that's yellow, you know that you can climb up onto it. That sort of thing. And then other things, like I refer to them as Ubisoft towers in Final Fantasy VII. But that sort of thing, that kind of map design where you have like a landmark and you go to it and then it fills out the rest of the map, that is another mechanic that shows up in like most games. I'd say that one's probably like, I don't know, that one's probably almost 20 years now, because that really took off from Assassin's Creed. But that kind of thing, it's sort of like this universal language across video games, and it's not just a AAA thing either. I'm sure you could find plenty of indie games that do similar things, although it, you know, it may not necessarily be like a tower or anything like that. But like that sort of thing is kind of what I'm getting at. Sort of those like design parallels that tell someone when they're playing a new video game, hey, this means that, you know this, so do that. And I think that's cool, because with video games being like coming together of a whole lot of different media, like music is music, and I mean there's parts that make up music, like the different types of instruments, that sort of thing. And I certainly don't say this to downplay any other types of media. Video games just happens to be one that I'm very familiar with because I play a lot of video games. What's up, Gargo? Welcome. Hope you're doing well. And then, like, you know, books is writing words on paper. There's not a whole lot of multimedia there. Movies, I mean, you have like the visual aspect, you have soundtracks, you have performances, so there's like more going into it. But with video games, you have like art, animation, soundtrack, how the game plays, how the game performs on a technical level, and then you also have writing, you also have acting, and then I'm sure if I continue to think about it, I could come up with other practices that go into it. But it's like this merging of a whole lot of different practices. It's kind of impressive that we were able to get to a point where visually, audibly, etc., you're able to get things like that are shared across games. And I've found that that's really cool because it's created this effect in me where I find myself frequently, whenever I play a new video game, I have begun doing things that the game hadn't taught me yet because I just kind of recognized what they were going for with a thing, and I was able to see what to do without reading the thing that tells me what to do. And, you know, obviously I've played a lot of games, so it makes sense. It's kind of like my life. I stream video games, and then when I'm offline, I play other video games sometimes. Other times I stare at a wall or take a nap. But y'all know how it be. But with games being short, back to that point, games being around for a relatively short amount of time. That's what I was trying to say, but my brain only said 3 of the words. They've gotten significantly more complicated. If you look at some of like the first video games that everyone's familiar with, I mean, Pac-Man, you move a stick around and the little yellow creature goes wop, 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 and eats up the things. Or like you go a little bit further back, you have Pong, where you have a ball and you move your thing left or right, and then it hits the ball. Or it doesn't, and you lose and you get angry and flip the machine. Which is usually my experience when I try to play Pong. But we've gone all the way from that to a game like Stellar Blade, where you're doing a whole bunch of different things. You have like third-person shooter stuff. You have Dark Souls type hack and slash stuff. You have Assassin's Creed Uncharted type platforming climbing type shit. All sorts of stuff. Video games have gotten a lot more complicated. But what you'll notice, and I think the key thing here, the key takeaway that I really found interesting as I thought about all this, as I was playing Stellar Blade and recognizing gameplay mechanics, is that outside of like some people, and Burb Mother being like one of the exceptions here, she used to really like DS games, and especially the Legend of Zelda DS games like Spirit Tracks and the other one, something time, I forget the name of it, but yeah, like the DS Zelda games. But then like when she tried to switch to like the 3DS or a Nintendo Switch or even Wii games, she was like, oh, this is too complicated for me. But I think that also had to do a lot with the fact that like she just kind of doesn't have the time. She has a lot going on, and it's new to her. But what I've found is that people can hop into current games that are so much more complicated than the original games, and they still tend to pick up on them after playing 1 or 2. And I think that's neat, because that shouldn't really hypothetically be possible without that kind of like video game design pattern where a whole bunch of different video games have kind of the same thing going on. What I mean by that is like, if you toss a whole lot of different gameplay mechanics into a game, and I won't like try to assume any kind of like average thing going on that games have, but I mean, just taking Stellar Blade as an example again, you have skill trees, you have a whole bunch of different types of upgrades, you have consumables, you have and that can even be split up into like, okay, you have healing, and then you have like battle stuff like grenades and shit. You have like there's a fishing mini game. You have town exploration, where you're talking to people and taking quests, puzzle solving, finding key codes and then remembering where they are and where the thing it unlocks is. A whole bunch of different upgrade items for the aforementioned upgrades. And then you get into combat and you have like, okay, dodging, blocking, whole bunch of different combos, the climbing stuff, finding stuff, exploration. And you know, a lot of this, it sounds, if you've played a lot of video games, it sounds like, oh, well, that's not a lot. I mean, it's like they all kind of connect together, right? But if you write it down on paper, that's a lot to keep track of. So like really, you'd think that every time we pick up a new video game on paper, and the whole point of this, I realize it's not like this, but on paper, that should be really fucking hard to keep up with. But most people can pick up a couple games and play them, and they're like, yeah, okay, well now I get it. Now I can do games. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because of some of these similar design philosophies. And I think it's an interesting take, because a lot of the time people will bash games for being unoriginal. And don't get me wrong, I don't really like AAA games a lot, but I think that has less to do with them being the same on like a gameplay minute-to-minute level with what you're doing. Like, everything has a skill tree, everything has Ubisoft towers, everything has like distractions on the map, pee pee poo poo. I think a lot more of it just has to do with dry writing and the fact that, like, I mean, the games themselves are just kind of dry in terms of things to do, because Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has that structure, and it doesn't like it doesn't suck. It's good, and it's because they actually like put care into it instead of bumping out something that looks really nice and feels extremely static. I don't think it necessarily has to do with the design philosophies behind it. And in fact, the more I think about it, the more I realize that, like, I actually kind of appreciate that most games are the same, because now I don't have to learn 5 million new things with a new video game, because I already have that experience from previous ones. The flip side, though, most games these days are made to be more user-friendly than old games. Yeah, I know there's a bunch of old games that newer gamers today would just not be able to handle. That's true. And I think that actually speaks to what I'm getting at, because older games, if you look at them, yes, and a lot of people will be like, oh, I want to go back to when video games were more experimental. And there is some, and the indie market kind of fills that niche to a degree. But in earlier, like even as far back as like the early 2000s, game design was kind of the Wild West. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about wasn't necessarily established. But, so like, I'm trying to think of how to word it, and then I start to go talking, thinking like, oh, well, by the time I actually finish my I'll have formulated a coherent thought, and then I just don't. But it was kind of the Wild West. People were trying things to see what stuck. And you know, some bangers came from that, and some not bangers came from that. But those sort of design philosophies that are shared across the industry weren't quite there yet. Which is why you can see, I mean, I think to some extent that's why you can see like a dramatic shift in Resident Evil from being like methodical tank controls to being like a pee pee poo poo shooter, for better or for worse. Hi Burb, back from shower. Yo, what's up Techless? Welcome. Hope you're doing well. Burb is alive. Burb was just exhausted. But yeah, in the same way though, there is some truth to the fact that a lot of like UI stuff and the way that things are tutorialized is definitely more user-friendly. They're more upfront with like giving you the information you need. But even that, I would argue, is like a shared aspect of game design that's developed from then to now. And I think, generally speaking, that's a good thing. And again, this isn't to say that experimental games are bad. I quite like experimental games. I like games that are fresh. But I also like games that I can just turn on and know what the fuck's going on. Again, with the caveat that a lot of AAA games are really dry and boring, follow generally the same plot with generally the same type of characters. Visually look really good, but technically have a lot of problems going on under the scenes. The minute-to-minute gameplay, the way combat works, being dry as shit. You get some diamonds in the rough. God of War, the God of War reboot comes to mind as games that are AAA and have that design philosophy and are good. I mentioned FF7 Rebirth as another one that has that design philosophy but is still really good. But fucking, where was I going with that? I had a point and I lost it because I got thirsty and drank water. Shit. Okay. Anyway, I think what I was getting towards though is something to do with like, cause in the gaming, like especially like the hardcore gamer sort of shared opinion, And maybe things have shifted, but I know for a while it was like, oh, AAA games bad. They're all the same thing. And I kind of, as I thought through this, trying to come up with a topic, I sort of realized that's kind of wrong and misguided. I think it's fine to say that a lot of AAA games are formulaic. I've not seen an Assassin's Creed, for example, in recent years that looked even remotely interesting. But I really don't think it's because they are all designed the same. I think it's more to do with they're just bad. They're just bad games. The core design philosophies behind it, however, are good. Which is why when you get a game like Stellar Blade, what's up, whomever? Welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing well. But when you get like a game like Stellar Blade, where you just take all those mechanics, make them engaging. God of War also had a banger story behind it, especially if you played the older ones. Yeah, exactly. Like, it was genuinely engaging. There was a lot to keep you playing there. Whereas Assassin's Creed, it's like, ooh, I'm an assassin. Fucking, oh, kill a man. I don't even know what Assassin's Creed's about anymore. I kind of clocked out once they killed off Desmond. Spoilers for a game that came out in 2013, or actually no, 2012. But what's up, Zuni? Welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing well. No, it's like the AAA games are bad, but I think the design philosophy behind having like some of these shared recognizable things going on is actually good, and I think we should actually celebrate that. Assassin's Creed was novel when it started that formula. Exactly. And Assassin's Creed has been really influential. I mean, you can play pretty much any game and be like, oh, Assassin's Creed. There's something from Assassin's Creed. It had most of the things that are common. RPG type progression system. Fucking climbing shit. The way the map works, the way exploration works. It even sort of, to an extent, pioneered the whole, like, having a smaller open world to explore rather than, like, one massive one. Which is a lot more prevalent, I've seen now, because Stellar Blade follows that. It has, like, these large, massive areas that are sort of like their own isolated open world. FF7 Rebirth does that. Sonic Frontiers, bizarrely enough, does that. Still really haven't gotten over the fact they made a whole ass open world Sonic game. Shit's kind of goofy, but I'm kind of about it. But like Assassin's Creed was the driver behind a lot of that. And then they just kept doing that and not making it that much more interesting. To the point where now, like here's the thing. Assassin's Creed 2 was Assassin's Creed 2. It was a banger for its time. If you play like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you're sitting there like, oh, it's Assassin's Creed 2. And by that, I mean, like, it has the same vibes. It has the same story, pretty much. It's very formulaic. But that's not the gameplay mechanics being formulaic, necessarily. It's just, like, undercooked. Assassin's Creed 2 was a game that came out in early Xbox 360 days. We're now on the Xbox PP Poo Poo. I forget what the new ones are called. Series X? But then like PS5. Like we're on, like we've evolved. Make add more to the game, please. It's like the Mario series. Yeah, I can't remember a good Mario side scroller since New Super Mario Bros. We can all agree the original Mario game was novel and interesting as fuck. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think in that sense things have to evolve. So like across series you can do the same kind of thing. Like Stellar Blade, new property which keeps it interesting. It has a pretty interesting art style. It has a relatively interesting world, although some of the story, which I won't get into in case people want to experience it for themselves. But I will say a lot of the story beats they're setting up, I'm only like a third of the way through the game, I think. But I already pretty much know exactly what the plot's gonna be, what the big twist is gonna be. But like the world itself kind of has some cool shit going on. And at risk of edging controversy, main character has nice booba. That really shouldn't be a controversy. I don't know why certain subsets of gamers, if you will, are causing a stink over it. But that's not the topic of the video. All that being said, like that's fresh. But like Assassin's Creed kind of did just make the same Assassin's Creed game. Call of Duty made the same Call of Duty game. You do have to like add new shit or like change shit up in a significant way to make one worth playing over the other. Because kind of as I was saying, if you've played Assassin's Creed 2, you've played 3, 4, 5, whatever the fuck they started calling them, Valhalla. There's apparently a new one that got announced, and you know, back when I first played Assassin's Creed 2, that probably would have been a big deal. Now it's like, oh, okay. Pokemon, for all its flaws, actually does a decent job of that to some degree, I feel like, because the settings are all pretty varied. Actually adds some new shit to do. Again, they're just not like technically well put together. They run like ass, despite being designed for one console specifically. But goddamn, shit, I thought I lost my train of thought again. I just wanted to bash Pokemon. Help a lot for older game series. Yeah, exactly. Like, you do have to keep it fresh. And that's what I'm saying with a lot of AAA games. It's not necessarily that they all have similar, like, overall mechanics. It's more that the minute-to-minute mechanics are the same. FF7R has its own unique combat system to itself. Stellar Blade has its own vibe. And I mean, again, it just set out to make a thing, a mix of things it enjoyed and make it feel good. And it's a mix that hasn't been seen before. So in that sense, it is new, despite not actually creating anything new for itself. And I think that's sort of where the difference lies. You do a decent job of being. Yo, thank you, Riker. Appreciate it. I do try my best at being. I don't know if that was meant to have more to it or not, but I would take the compliment anyway. But no, I mean, to that, it's the main point, I think, then, is just that I think people bash AAA games for the wrong reason. It's not the shared, like, concepts. It's just the way that they're executed. And I think the concepts themselves are super important for getting people into games and keeping people into games. Because if every game now was like its own isolated Wild West type beat where people are experimenting with new shit like it was back in like the PS1, PS2, games would be downright unplayable because there'd be like 20 new things you have to learn. Monster collection games follow Pokemon too closely without doing anything new. True. And that's its own thing of like derivative games and then just kind of doing the same thing. And there's a whole separate discussion there, I think, about how Stellar Blade does a really good job of it, because they don't just take one thing they like and do it. They take like 3 or 4 and have them tie together in an interesting way. I mentioned that it has third-person shooter mechanics and it has like the hack and slash stuff, is because I do like mean in the moment-to-moment gameplay in any given combat encounter, you can go directly from Lies of P's Sekiro type shit to I am playing Dead Space, the remake. And I do mean that. Like, it feels like that. That's fresh. Nothing there is brand new, but it's not derivative. It is fresh. There's a balance though. You can't get stagnant and just release new flavors, but you also can't Wild West this shit. But yeah, exactly, because I think if we didn't have stuff like that, like we didn't have the recognizable Ubisoft Tower type thing, with icons on the map and the small like isolated areas. If we didn't have like the yellow rocks to know where to climb or the red barrels to know what's gonna blow up, certain like shared game feel for melee combat, shooter combat, etc., then you'd have to relearn everything when you pick up another game. Copyright, it's so strict that everyone that are talented enough to make a not clone is too scared of being sued for making something that even hints at being similar. It kind of depends, I feel like. And I don't really know how that works, because that was always an interesting thing. On a slightly similar note to that, I know for a while, what was it? It was being able to play, I'm trying to remember the company. There was a patent on being able to put like a mini game in your loading screen. And I think it was Bandai Namco was the only company that was allowed to have a load screen that had a playable aspect to it to keep you from getting bored in a loading screen. And I don't know if that kind of shit still happens, where like if you have like a micro mechanic like that, if you can like copyright it and have ownership of that for a while. That got overturned. I don't know if it was overturned or if it just expired, because I know that kind of thing only lasts a certain number of years. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was overturned, because that's so arbitrary. But I don't know if shit like that happens, because like, I don't know. I guess Pal World's an interesting example. Not because it copied Pokemon one for one. In fact, in a lot of ways it didn't. But like, at least visually it had a lot of similarities to Pokemon. And yet, for what I can tell, it is kind of not really had any issues with that. So it makes me wonder if a lot of that isn't imagined too. Like, if you make a game that plays like Pokemon and looks like Pokemon, it's kind of Pokemon. But if you put your own spin on it, like your own like distinct art style, some slight modifications, and I guess not like, there's a certain bar I feel like you have to cross where, like, you have to do something to make it more interesting. I guess a good example would be like SMT, which is kind of also Pokemon, but not really. Like, yes, you're catching monsters and fighting with them, but like you have a party of 4. You have the press turn, which makes it different from Pokemon, where both Pokemon choose a thing and then they do it. Most of the creature design that's like Pokemon. Yeah, exactly. So I guess, like, where do you draw the line on copyright and when you've actually straight up stolen from a thing? But then also that's the nature of indie development, I guess, because SMT is a large property with a lot of money put into it. You know, certainly not on the level of Pokemon, the highest grossing media property ever, I think, actually. Which really makes you wonder why the games are the way they are. Well, it really doesn't. Corporate greed go burr. But in a perfect world, Pokemon games would be bangers. But when you have like an indie developer, like 1 or 2 people making a passion product, on an objective level, you make like a Pokemon fan game or a Pokemon inspired game, and if it is just like Pokemon but not as good, I mean, that is understandable. But whenever I see it, like, there's a certain line, and it's kind of like, it's a very subjective thing. It's not like you can measure how different a game is from one to another. But I feel like a lot of that time spent emulating a thing could have been spent putting a twist on a thing. Pokemon game made by the fans and was released by the company. That would kind of go hard. And Pokemon maybe isn't the best example, because I've seen a lot of Pokemon fan games that do go insanely hard. Like, some of those motherfuckers are crazy talented. But like, in general, with that kind of thing where you're inspired by one thing and you really want to emulate that one thing, I think in that case there does need to be a twist on it. Because why would I play that when I can play the thing that is the same thing but better? But I get thinking about it now and breaking that down, it's the same thing with like series that stagnate. Like Call of Duty. I mentioned Call of Duty earlier and I didn't really bash on it enough because it kind of deserves it. If you are the developer of a game, you make Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, and then, I mean, this is a bad example, like you make Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, sure, because that's kind of where it started going downhill for me. They make Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, relatively good video game, and you're making another game and you're like, oh, we did that, that'll work again, and then you make that again, let's say Advanced Warfare. I mean, why wouldn't I just play Modern Warfare 3? So I think games have to evolve, games have to have their own interesting thing about it. But the piece of that I think gets lost a lot, and what I've seen a lot of critique is like, oh, this game doesn't do anything original, so I'm going to dock it points, or ooh, every video game now is the same, they all do the same things, rah rah rah, video game's bad. I think the piece that gets missing is that you do want to keep that DNA. I can't prove this, obviously, but I truly do believe that if every video game was like ground up different from like that common design philosophy, gaming would be a lot worse off for it. A lot more video games would suck donkey ass. If I outright say this game is really heavily inspired by blank, let's say Drakengard, people will praise it because how Pokemon is, everyone says they were copying because of the culture Pokemon and Nintendo has cultivated. That is also true. Racing games were in a real rut for a while. That is also true. What about all the Hollow Knight clones that are out? Deviator, Crowsworn, etc. I mean, those are a little bit more interesting. I feel like indie developers in general are more free to be. I wanted to reply to this one too. I love Halo for being completely different, but every FPS slowly went, oh, this is popular for this game, so we have to do this exact thing too. Exactly, and there's a difference between copying a game and copying the core of a game, and I think that's sort of, I think that kind of sums it up. There's like a certain vibe in most games that needs to be there, but the shell around that needs to innovate a little bit and keep things fresh. Hollow Knight clones, yeah. So indie games tend to be able to be more creative because they're a lot less restricted by funding and like investors. And also, that's a good point that Hollow Knight is a clone in a sense, although it did a lot of different interesting things too, like having a different tone, its own distinct art style, its own gameplay mechanics. But like, and I've seen and played a lot of like pretty trash, very obviously Hollow Knight clones, don't get me wrong, they're definitely out there. But I feel like I've seen a lot of Metroidvanias crop up after that. A lot of like Hollow Knight inspired things that managed to do their own thing. What's the fucking Ender Lilies, I think it is. That's a banger. Fucking, what's the other one I'm thinking of? Is it Blasphemous? The one where you're like the like Crusader Inquisitor type beat. Ori and the Blind Forest. To some extent Tunic, although that was kind of like an isometric Metroidvania more than like a 2D one. I'm sure I could think of other examples, but there's a lot of those too that keep that core design of like, and I mean that's kind of its own subset of what we're talking about, like the way the maps are put together, the way that you get different abilities. Pretty much every one of those types of games now is going to have like a double jump, a wall jump, you know, stuff like that. And then they'll also have their own shit to it that kind of changes it up a bit. But the core there, all the recognizable things, will allow you to, once you've played one or two Metroidvanias, pick it up, and now all you have to do is focus on the new shit and learn like, okay, what do they map certain buttons to? what kind of tricks did they use when hiding things. And I think that does make video games immensely more playable because you're not getting overwhelmed by that sort of thing. And that's sort of the big through line here that I sort of started to observe as I played Stellar Blade. I think that is an important part of gaming that just kind of never gets talked about. So I wanted to talk about it. So yeah, hopefully this was a little bit insightful. So kind of new, I want to share my thoughts on Temtem versus cassette beats and why CB works while Temtem was a bore. Yeah, go for it. I don't think I've played either of those, but yeah, feel free. Absolutely. I love discussion. I love talking. I love back and forth. Pogoing off enemies in Metroidvanias, which I would think of doing, I wouldn't think of doing without Hollow Knight experience. Yeah, I mean, in that way, Hollow Knight influenced that sort of core of the genre, because now, like, using enemies as traversal is a lot more common. And I don't think that that's a bad thing or derivative. Like, it's not like, oh, we stole from Hollow Knight. I wouldn't accuse someone of stealing from Hollow Knight for that. I think it's more like, oh, that's a good idea that more games should do. If you want to go real old school, a great example of that would be drop shadows in 3D platformers so you can see where you're going to land on the ground. At one point, that was a new revolutionary idea, and now it's just kind of in your subconscious that you look where your shadow is when you're making a jump. That's not stealing, that's just a good idea. So, like, I don't know, I just think it's neat. I think it was worth talking about. I think it was fun. But now's the part where I'm kind of winding down. My brain has stopped working, and now I have to decide. Something like Ghosts and Goblins is pogoing. It's been around forever. For sure, for sure. Oh, it's definitely been around, but I would say that most people weren't thinking about it until... Well, no, because Mario games do a lot of that too. And then, yeah, the Ice Beam freezing foes to use as a stepladder. Like, the DNA for that's been around for a while. It just became really obvious to me and a lot of people in Hollow Knight. I was a lot of the mechanics of Pokemon, the battle system's progression is there, but it feels stale and like it's just putting weird paint on by inventing a bunch of new types. Right. That makes sense. We're gonna see with these for VR games. I haven't played enough to know, but I do kind of feel like there is some kind of... Oh god, that is true. Because in Pong, you bounce a ball off of an object, and that's kind of like pogoing. Every game is Pong. 6 degrees of Pong. 6 degrees of separation from Pong. Oh no. But yeah, I feel like there are definitely... Set Beats keeps a lot of the core feel of Pokemon, designing the game around double battles, leading to what can make those mechanically interesting. Yeah, like, it's not just the fights. They've taken a... These weren't originally designed to play video games on them, so every video game technically copies that aspect. I mean, the counterpoint to that would be console exclusives, because video game consoles were verifiably made to play video games. But they were also built off of existing computer technology that wasn't meant to play video games, so I suppose that still stands. But yeah, like taking a thing and fleshing it out, I think adds enough to make it more interesting. I've never played either of those, but I mean, even just on paper, I can see why Cassette Beasts would be more interesting than just a game that has Pokemon-type battles. Asteroid is a clone of Pong because it is a video game. True. True. But Pong also, I don't think, was actually the first video game. I don't remember what it was, but I don't know. Video game history is its own sort of subtopic here. But I mean, yeah, that gets to the core of what I'm saying is like, you can take most of a thing and still make it original, but you can't just copy a thing. And I think there is a distinction there that's kind of important and interesting to think about. So I don't know, hopefully I got you all thinking. Hopefully this was at least a little bit insightful, despite me being very out of it and all over the place. But yeah, I don't know. That pretty much covers everything I wanted to go over. Thought it was a neat topic. Seems like y'all enjoyed it. Got a lot of discussion going. Heck yeah. So, yeah. Fucking... Yo, what's up, everyone? I'm Ezra Andromeda, the Dementia Burb. Today we're going to be talking about gameplay mechanics. So, sorry for the late stream here. I just woke up from a nap. I got home and, well, I thought I was going to stay up and play some video games, but after I played some video games for a bit and ate dinner, I was like, oh, I need to go nap. And I thought, okay, I'll lay down for an hour. And now I woke up, like 2 hours later, and we're here. Oddly enough, I had a dream that I did this entire stream already, but okay, y'all get the point. All right. But yeah, that stream. I need to decide if I want to play Hades or if I want to end stream and do something else. Do y'all want to watch Hades? Do y'all want to play Hades, or do y'all want to go to bed? What's the vibe? Hades nuts. So true, bestie. So true. Probably gonna go get boba. Fair. Have fun. Real. Thank you. Enjoy the boba, gamer. Enjoy the bob. I mean, the follow-up question would be, if I do Hades, do I want to make another waiting room for it and raid into it? Or do I want to just do it on this one and hide a little fun Hades Easter egg at the end of my just chatting stream? I think I'd probably make another one just for organization's sake. Gonna go eat because I haven't had the chance today. Understandable. Recommend it from an analytics point. Yeah, that, and also just keeping things organized. If people don't want to hear me talk about pee-pee poo-poo bullshit for an hour, they can just watch the Hades. If people only want to hear me talk about the pee-pee poo-poo bullshit for an hour, then, you know, they can do that. So it's nice to separate them out, but it'd also be funny to hide Hades in another stream. I don't know. I'm just kind of addicted. I'm almost certainly going to end up doing a Gorilla Hades stream tomorrow regardless, but I kind of feel like playing it right now for a bit. I just don't know if y'all would be interested in that or not. It seems like at least a couple people would probably be around for it. So I guess we'll do it. Probably only a couple runs, but I want to fuck around with the, the stuff we unlocked yesterday. So I guess I'm gonna do that. Let me make the waiting room. If I duplicate this tab, is it gonna blow things up? It did not. Or did it? No, it did not. Fucking, oh god, I'm thirsty. Whenever I sleep... Is sweating a lot when you sleep like a normal thing, by the way, or do I need to see a doctor? Do y'all like sweat a bunch when you sleep? Is that like a normal thing? Or am I broken? Do I have like a manufacturing error? Error, burb, sweat. Ah. Okay. What do I want to title this? Maybe have the AC on colder. I did actually turn the AC off because it was on full blast and it was the Arctic before I napped, so that might have had something to do with it too. I don't know. I'm probably fine. I'm sure I'm fine. I'm sure me being exhausted all the time isn't a sign of bad things happening to me. That's also probably not a sign of bad things happening to me that happens all the time. I'm sure I'm perfectly healthy. Okay. What do I even title? That's just a sign of Coke Zero? True. Shoutouts to Conk Zero. Oh god, I'm not creative enough to title streams on the spot. Oh no. The stream where Ezra plays Hades 2. There we go. That's what it's called. Alright. We lean into the lack of creativity here. Okay. And then I need to set up the redirect to go there. But yeah, for anyone who decides to head out, thank you for coming. I enjoyed this. I hope y'all did too. I think it was cool. We had a lot of cool examples. A lot of y'all seemed... Wait, why is it doing that? Am I still live? Am I borked? It seemed like y'all had fun with it. Okay, it's working fine. So I enjoyed it. Hopefully I can come up with another topic in a couple weeks. Next week is going to be a cleaning stream again. Because I want to keep that habit up. But yeah, again, like I always say, I do enjoy these. I enjoy talking about weird, slightly insightful, slightly confusing shit that pops in my brain. And I hope y'all have been enjoying them too. It's been good practice for just off the cuff talking about things and using my brain and being able to keep streams engaging. So I think it's good. I think it's fun. And I want to keep doing it. Someday I'll actually start writing up like scripts and stuff and make like video essay type actual videos. But for now, live streams have to do because that's very time consuming and a lot of editing and research and putting things together. But it is a goal of mine. So yeah, I hope we can keep doing them and keep having good conversations here. But yeah, now it's time for me to raid into myself and zone out and play Hades, because Hades is fun as shit. So yeah, I'll see y'all in a couple minutes. And until then, it's a burb. Bye-bye.